by the Lord, the living God, is to see that you are made in the image of God. That you are made in the image of God, and that does not mean the visual image of God, because the visual image of God is a little hard to fathom in that God is a spirit. But you are made in the image of God with intellect and with intelligence. You're made in the image of God with emotion and sensitivity, and you are made in the image of God with judgment, the ability to make a right or wrong discerning call. And that is the true meaning of the image of God. And so God has made us and put into us each the ability to really deal with these things and rise to God's standards as we come to understand them. But we can't understand God's standards unless we understand God's revelation. God has revealed him. God is not a gender. We just don't have a neutral gender in English. But God has revealed God's self to us over time. And that is the whole idea of the revelation, so that we can come to know the character and attributes and qualities of God. Not only so that we can know God, but so that we can know what to rise to ourselves to some extent. And, of course, the epitome of that was Jesus. Jesus came as one of us with all of the same characteristics that we have. Jesus did not float above the ground. Jesus was not impervious to pain. Jesus Jesus got hungry and tired, and I'm sure at times somewhat exasperated. Is that the word? Yeah. So we're called upon to look at that, but yet we are always called upon to recognize that the God we are called to is greater than anything that we understand. And so we always live with this sort of tension, this amazement, this awe of God, and yet this intimacy with God. How do we put those characteristics together? I think it's kind of tough and really fascinating. Because how can the great and eternal almighty God, I put in the insert there if you choose to read that, the idea that God is almighty, that word is omnipotent. God is always present, that word is omniscient. God is all aware of everything. Omnipresent, that was the other one. Omniscient is aware of everything. God is this unfathomable spirit intelligence that knows everything in the universe in a way that is just beyond our fathoming. Talked about that last week talking about your God is too small. Yeah. No offense, but your God is too small. If you weren't here last week, maybe you thought about it during the course of the week. That's no offense to you. There's no way that your God can't be too small, because we can't begin to see or understand the magnitude and the enormity of the creation of God. We talked about billions of stars out there and billions of planets around billions of stars, and we're just beginning to get a grasp of that with some of the technology of the 20th and 21st century. David looked up into the stars. I'm going to read that again in a minute. And he said, "Whoa, God, you are awesome." But he didn't have he didn't have huge telescopes or satellite telescopes, those things. Yet he already came to this. And he said, "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, and the moon and stars that you've set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them? Human beings that you care for them." He's sort of saying, why do you care about us? You've made us a little lower than the angels and crowned us with glory and honor and made us rulers over the works of your hands. You put everything under our feet. All flocks and herds and animals of the wild, the birds of the sky and the fish of the sea, all that swim the paths of the seas. Lord, our God, how mighty, how majestic is your name in all the earth. That is a beautiful psalm. I hope I did it some credit in reading it there, Psalm number 8. If you want to go back and read that one, in which the psalmist, I guess it's David, is looking at it and just saying that when I begin to fathom by looking out into the stars, the majesty and the magnitude, what am I to you? Why do I even matter? And have you ever thought that? Well, if you do, it is an interesting consideration. But if you think that, then you missed part of the boat. Basically, you missed the major part of the cruise. Because it isn't, respectfully, about our qualities. It's about the character of God. That God cares about us. That God cares about us. That God cares about us and makes us into ones who respond not out of force but out of desire. I gave you a little litany last week of doing some studies in neurochemistry because it interests me in rehab and recovery. And there are, they think, at least 20 billion neurons in your brain. Whoa. I kind of said last week, I don't know who counted those, but or how they came to that, but that's a lot of neurons. And they're all connected with various different cells, and so there are multiples of billions of cells in addition to that, and they're firing constantly, going back and forth, in an amazing litany of activity that is completely beyond our awareness. We don't experience it, but these are going on through synapses and firing across synaptic gaps at the rate of it on a very, very quiet second, 120,000 times a second. Now you know why you're so tired. Isn't that amazing to think about? And then when you get active and begin to do things, it's the firing of the receptors goes way, way up farther than that. So this amazing universe inside our brain is a magnificent statement of the glory of God's creation. How about that? You really look at that. But that's just all there because God has made us and appointed us to be in some kind of a relationship with Him. That is the Judeo-Christian point of view. That is not necessarily the scientific point of view. But darn, my point of view is so much more interesting than that of the secular scientists. I'm grateful for them. I'm not putting them down in any way at all because they are not enemies. But it's just the idea that when you begin to see that this is the result of a design made by God, then that is pretty spectacular. But it puts upon us a kind of an anointed responsibility, doesn't it? If that's the case, then we're supposed to take care of this. This is for a purpose. And 40 plus years ago, I got a call to that purpose, which has been with me ever since. And many of you have one that resonates personally for you that's just about the same. To know this God and to live in relationship with this God honorably all the days of your life. Wow. So again, that means that gives us not only an amazing privilege to know this. There are lots of people out there who don't know this. Do you know that you are chosen by God and made in God's image for a particular purpose, for a real called upon purpose? Some people have no idea about that. But then again, as we have that, we also have a responsibility and an accountability of sorts. I don't think that God is probably particularly pleased with the way that human beings have treated the homeland that God gave us. I look with just appalling disfavor on the way we've treated this planet, on the way we've treated the other species that we're called to be the husbands to. In other words, in that sense, taken care of, called upon to nurture and take care of other species. And species are being wiped out for foolish and completely asinine, selfish purposes all across the world. That is not a good accountability. The planet is hideously polluted in places where it shouldn't be. The oceans are filled up with garbage, and somehow I don't know if I'm going to be accountable to make some kind of explanation for that to God. I don't certainly feel condemned by that, but I feel a desire to somehow express the need for us to be people who, given this privilege and this revelation of God, are ones who really stand up for this, who stand up for the things that we choose to identify as right. I have some causes that I support and pursue. They're quite diverse, ranging from animals to soldiers. And I'm not talking about me here, except they're just things that I believe in, and wounded soldiers is what I'm talking about. We are called upon to get beyond ourselves. In every case, if there is a petition of God to speak to us, it's to stop consistently and only nurturing ourselves and giving to our own thing, and to give more freely and more abundantly to outside of ourselves, beyond ourselves. I'm working this through as I say it. You can hear me thinking this through. I do believe that we are called upon to be giving people, giving to the unattractive people of the world, the struggling people, the down and out. We're called upon to give some of our lives in a form of sacrifice. We are called upon, quite frankly, brother and sister Christians, to give money. This is not a petition to give money to this church. It's a petition to identify what portion of what I give is given to the higher cause of humanity and God's directive. So yes, we are quickly inclined to spend things. And some of you are already so far ahead on this boat. I mean, there are some of you who are so generous and so facile in your generosity that I just am amazed. But God is always calling us to rise to a higher standard. We live in a world where we are face to face with people who are calling us up or calling us down. In this community, this gay community in Palm Springs, I see lots and lots of people whose calling and outreach is not to rise up to a more honorable standard, but seems to be to lower to a more dishonorable standard in many cases. And that sounds more judgmental than I am. I'm not thinking of people as I say that, because I don't think they're bad. I think that's just the world that they live in, the world they know. We've been notified that we have got a standard to live according to. Paul says in, quoted it here, 1 Corinthians 11, verse 1. Paul told his followers to follow him as he followed the example of Christ. In another version it says, be imitators of me as I am of Christ Jesus. Okay. Well, I can kind of imitate Paul, but I'm much more interested in imitating Jesus. In the sense that I can, where Jesus never said a vile word to other people, except the legalists. Yeah. Jesus made mercy a hallmark of his very persona, looking upon the down and out. Jesus walked into the crowds of people where the religious people of his time would not have anything to do with him. And he touched them, and he talked with them. He healed them. Continued to get in more and more trouble by doing this. He actually walked out and healed a leper. The people of Jesus' time would not get within 50 yards of a leper. Jesus went and touched them. Interesting, isn't it? The real gospel of Jesus Christ is delightfully liberating, exquisitely honoring, and really, really difficult. I wonder if the gospel had been preached across all time with the clarity of its love demand, if we wouldn't be living in a different world than we live in. I don't know. Hard to guess. You live with that? You begin to think about that? Little by little you begin to do it. And you experience this transformation of your spirit as your soul wants to align correctly with the Lord, begin to experience that sense of gratitude that you're not just a bystander or an observer, but you are a conduit of the Spirit of the living God. And that begins to be an incarnation of joy, a sense of fulfillment. I am living here with some purpose that is so much greater than me, that it fulfills me and redeems me. And people who've had an opportunity to work, whether it's just for moments or for lifetimes or years in the Spirit, certainly know what I'm talking about. It is so hard and so wonderful. You getting what I'm talking about? Kind of living on the other side of Revelation, where we begin to understand that God is constantly speaking and giving us the capacity to do the things that we're called to rise to. Yeah, because, by the way, it's easy to say, I can't do this. I don't have any of the qualifications for this. Yeah. I get that. God says, do it. Just do it. You'll be amazed what begins to happen.